Now that Pantheon has secured proper funding, we have been seeing steady progress from developer Visionary Realms. As we saw a short time ago, they have succeeded in creating a bare-bones MMO that had 5 playable classes and a level cap of 10. They also created environments with monsters to populate them. Ugh, monster! The idea behind this was that Visionary Realms stated that they first wanted to create a fundamentally basic MMO that was fun to play as a proof of concept. We did it, boys. It's pretty fun. Before proceeding with adding the flashier stuff. It makes sense, really. Why build all this extra stuff if the core gameplay just isn't engaging and entertaining? From what I saw of the pre-alpha test footage, I would love to jump into that world even now in its infantile state and camp some mobs for a while. With that successful test complete, more interesting features are being conceptualized and added to the game. Yes, quite interesting. Put it in the game. Here's what we know after a statement from Brad McQuaid, the Chief Creative Officer for Visionary Realms. We already know that Pantheon will take quite a few basic mechanics from classic MMORPGs like EverQuest. It doesn't come as much surprise, seeing as most of the dev team is made up of veterans that worked on titles like EverQuest and Vanguard. So far, Pantheon includes systems such as meditation to gain mana, fizzling spells, lightning bolt, fuck, damn it, an extensive skill system, a heavy emphasis on group play, and inventory management. Those are just a few of the systems that Pantheon inherited from EverQuest. I'll leave a link in the description below to the video that I made covering the systems Pantheon inherited from EQ. None of this is news to anyone who's followed the game's development, and while building on EverQuest isn't a bad thing at all, hell, most of us EQ vets wouldn't mind just a well-executed EQ clone. For good or for bad, Pantheon still seeks to be its own game. Let's look at what other features we can expect from Pantheon. Lucky for us, the new features aren't seemingly coming from left field, but instead actually seem to make a lot of sense. In fact, they make so much sense that at one point I found myself wondering why these things aren't standard in MMOs today. The first feature on my list isn't about the what, but the where. Where? The dev team is creating environments that will directly affect the way you and your team tackle various situations. Imagine an area that constantly drains your mana. Whoop, there goes my mana. Or how about an area or zone that completely negates the use of spells? As you can imagine, this will require the players to come up with new strategies and tactics to complete content. Well shit, that didn't work. Anybody got any ideas? It can make you seriously reconsider your party makeup when taking on challenges in these areas. It will be very interesting to see how this idea plays out as we get further into the game's development. The idea that the very lands you are exploring can create their own set of unique challenges makes for a more immersive experience overall. I, for one, am pretty excited to see how this feature turns out. Another thing that the dev team is trying to do is have an enhanced AI that can react to players' actions in real time, changing the way monsters fight against the player, based on a number of factors. Imagine fighting a boss with a group of primarily spellcasters. This enemy may fight the group in a completely different tactic than fighting a primarily melee party. The team at Visionary Realms says this idea will make for a more engaging experience instead of just adding more health or damage to make encounters more difficult. We need harder monsters. Again, it makes perfect sense. How many games have we seen where when playing PvE, the player can use basic strategies to easily defeat foes that would never work against another player who can think for themselves and react accordingly? Wouldn't it be cool to see a boss fight where the boss doesn't just do a set of scripted actions that are predictable to each phase of the fight? How many WoW bosses have we killed that are just cake after you learn the predictable patterns that they follow? Call that a boss fight? Now imagine that same boss using those abilities in a completely different order, or even changing their set of abilities entirely to more effectively combat the player's group. It's an extremely promising system, one that sounds like it will take some serious programming time to do correctly. Hopefully this one doesn't turn out to be another promising system MMO devs hype up, but never really comes to fruition like we would hope. Time will tell. The MMO genre has become increasingly less and less social. Hey dude, you want a group? Fuck you, you filthy casual. Let's take WoW for example. Remember before the looking for group system was implemented? It was important to be in an active guild and have a good-sized friends list to get groups effectively. Nowadays though, you don't really need friends at all. You can log in, queue up, and be in a dungeon in minutes, and the dungeons go by so fast that you hardly even have to type a word to your group mates. Pantheon is all about bringing back the social aspect of playing an online game. To help foster this along, Pantheon devs are working on a system which utilizes something they call designated downtime. And while this sounds dreadfully boring, just hear me out. Think of a time in an MMO where you had to wait on a group member for a while. God, how long could it take to take a shit? How about waiting on respawns in a camp in EverQuest? What do we naturally do in situations like these as human beings? Well, most of the time we have a conversation with our group. We communicate and joke, learn things about each other, and ultimately forge friendships. The team says that they're working on a system that will provide players with just enough of this downtime without being too grindy or slow. It's a fine line to be sure, and I for one am glad that they see the importance of having time to create these bonds with our fellow players. After all, if you don't want to make friends and play with other humans, why are you playing an MMORPG at all? Pantheon will include 4 primary class types: Healer, be healed; Tank, stand behind me; Damage, yeah, and Support, fight my friends. It's unknown if there will be a dual spec type feature, and if I had to guess, I would think not. The reason for this is that the classes are being made to fit into that one role that they were intended, like the classic games that came before. You wouldn't expect to roll a cleric and then have a badass DPS spec. I'm a heal, and I'm a whoop your ass. You had to rely on teaming up with characters that could dish out the damage while you kept them buffed up and healed. Pantheon seeks to return classes to their intended use, which is to be different. Current MMOs give too many types of abilities to too many classes. The basic idea behind classes at their core is that one class will excel at something while the others simply don't. Otherwise, why bother having different classes at all? Having each class feel unique in the way that they perform is the whole point. They also said that they're being very mindful of making sure that hybrid characters perform as hybrid characters should, being diverse enough to be able to support the group in a variety of ways, but not being super awesome at any one of their skills. Take the Crusader for example. They can heal, but not as well as a cleric, and they can tank some, but not as good as a warrior. I know what you're thinking. Well, duh, dude, that's how it's supposed to be. Well, yeah, it is. I hate to use WoW as another example, but look at Paladins in WoW. Often the best tank, healer, and in some expansions, one of the top DPS. Hybrids simply shouldn't be able to outperform core classes. It's that simple. It's gotten out of hand in many games where almost every type of class has some type of stun or crowd control, some kind of heal, AoE, and any other type of specialty skill you can think of. Why? Because of PvP. It's all about that balance. It's all about that balance. Pantheon is being designed as a PvE experience, and it's unknown what kind of PvP system, if any, the game will employ. Speaking of social play, we do know that Pantheon will include some kind of mentor system, where high-level character players will be able to somehow help their lower-level comrades. We've seen this kind of system before in EverQuest 2, for example, where high-level player drops his level to match the lower player, also boosting his friend's experience gain by a certain percentage. It's unclear for now as to how it will work in Pantheon, but it's a safe bet that it will be something similar to that. There's also talk of a kind of retirement system, where players can retire a high-level character and provide bonuses to a new character. It's an interesting thought, and I for one have always wished that I could dump all the XP I gained in a toon that I no longer play into an alt that I'm desperately trying to level. Speaking of alts, the devs have also stated that Pantheon players will be encouraged to play alts. And there may even be a kind of system in the game where you can bring an alt into your group to perform certain functions that your group may be lacking. The example they used was, say you don't have a rogue in your party, but you need to open a locked door. forgot my keys again. Anybody got a rogue? Someone could bring their rogue, unlock the door, and the group proceeds on. This isn't a new idea. Hell, we've all probably brought an alt into a group for a similar function, but the way they're making it sound is that your main character may not have to log out or even leave the group at all for you to bring an alt. I don't foresee you being able to play 2 tunes at once on the same account at the same time, but it would be interesting if you could bring them along and they would perform more as a follower, only using certain skills when you command them to. There's so many different ways this system can go, but it certainly does pique some interest. There's quite a lot about Pantheon that makes it worth watching. I, for one, am going to be keeping a very close eye on this game's development, so be sure to subscribe to my channel for the latest on the game's development. Let me know in the comments what you think about these systems. Do you think Visionary Realms can deliver the goods? You can also follow my channel on Twitter at BrainBeanGaming for the latest updates on what's going on with the channel. And as always, guys, thanks for watching the Brain Bean Gaming channel, and I'll see you guys next time.